Have you been selling real estate for a little while? Or maybe you're brand new. Maybe you've been doing this for decades and you feel like, gosh, maybe I could be doing this better. Maybe I could be closing more deals. Or I made an awesome connection at an open house, but like, why didn't it go anywhere? Like, I reached out to them and just like, I don't know, why couldn't I get it to the finish line? Today, I'm going to break down 5 common mistakes about why you are not sealing the deal. Let's dive in.
You're listening to the Girl Get Your Face Off a Bus Bench podcast, where we invite you to check your ego at the app, grab a cup of coffee, and get ready to dive into all things real estate marketing, social media, friendship, hardship, love, money mindset, and all the things that celebrate you as a badass boss babe.
We're here to encourage you, show up for you, give you a loving kick in the pants when you need it most, and be your soft place to land on the hardest of days. So pull up a seat at our table and get ready to be inspired and start living your best life by design.
Welcome to the Girl Get Your Face Off a Bus Bench podcast. We are so excited you're here.
Okay, girls, let's dive in. All right, Bus Bench babes, Beth here doing a solo episode. So thanks for being here. Today, we're going to talk all about 5 common mistakes real estate agents are making for why they're not closing the deal. And you might be thinking, well, I know how to close a deal, but do you, or are you letting some things slip through the cracks where there could be some tweaks and some nuancy things done differently to your business to get more business in the pipeline and to close more transactions, right? When that's the whole point of doing this, is helping people and making a difference in people's lives. But in order to be able to do that, you have to be able to make a connection with people and, do what you say you're going to do and get to the finish line and make a difference in their life. And then they tell their friends, and their friends tell their friends, and that's how this all works. So let's just jump in. I've got my top 5 list, and without further ado, I would say number 1 on the list is lack of follow-up. I think real estate agents are notorious for this, and I'm going to be the first one to put myself in this category also. Early on in my career, I was terrible at this. We've talked about this on other podcast episodes. I had so much imposter syndrome. I honestly thought people were going to ask me questions, like hard questions I didn't have answers to, and I didn't want to disappoint people, like all those things. And so I would meet someone, I would have a great connection, and then I would completely drop the ball. I wouldn't follow up. I wouldn't do what I said I was going to do, and not staying in communication. Well, by not staying in communication, you're telling people that you're just not reliable. And I am a reliable person. Ryan, who's editing this podcast, is probably like, well, she doesn't stick to her podcast deadlines, but generally speaking, I'm kidding. No, I am a reliable person. And so then if someone thinks that I'm not, all of a sudden it's like, oh God, that's just that. It feels terrible. If someone were to tell me that I'm not reliable. Here's a perfect example. One of my girlfriends, she's we became friends. Well, we were friends, and then she moved to Minnesota. I knew her through the mortgage industry, and she moved to Minnesota, and we became besties. And we were in a Landmark seminar. Landmark, if you know Landmark, it's this awesome, self-help, self-awareness conference. And so we were taking these Landmark courses, and she's like, we plan a time to meet when we're going to go to dinner or whatever, go hang out with other friends or do whatever we're going to do. And she goes, you're late all the time. And I'm like, what? I'm like, I'm never late. I hate being late. But then when I stopped and thought about it, I'm like, oh, I wasn't thinking that timeline was actually carved in stone with her for our dinner plans. But if I have a meeting with a client, I would be totally on time and probably 10 minutes early. So she's like, well, basically you're telling me that time spent with me isn't important. And I'm like, oh my God, you're one of my best friends. I can't believe you would say that. And so I really had to take a look in the mirror and be like, oh, well, I said that I was going to be there, except I'm not there. So it's making people feel like they're not important. So lack of follow-up has that same effect on potential clients when they're like, oh, she said she was going to do X or Y, and then she never did. Well, maybe she just doesn't want our business. And I hear this all the time where someone says they'll reach out to someone and they'll go, well, we met with so and so and like we just never heard back. I'm like, what? That's so crazy. But like all of that, like the communication and your cadence of your communication and how you're building that relationship with your new potential clients, like that is all like the same thing that you do when you're like in a new romance, when you're like dating somebody new. Like you want to get to know them. Why do you want to get to know them? Because like you want to know more about them and you want to spend time with them. Well, it shouldn't be any different when we're trying to build relationships with new clients. Really? I mean, people want to work with people they know, like, and trust. Well, how are you going to get to that if you aren't building a relationship with someone? So communication, the stats back in the day were that online leads convert at like 6 to 8 communications and like touches and communications along the way. And now that number is well into the double digits. It's probably over 20. Now I do not have that specific stat, but people want to know that you are actually in the game. And another interesting stat I heard recently is that, like, if you're working with online leads, and I don't even think this just pertains to online leads, but this also could pertain to someone that was referred to you from a past client, is that many times when you start that conversation to when you get to the finish line, it many times is like a 1 to 2 year process. So if you think you're just going to meet someone and they're going to buy a house tomorrow, yes. Does that happen? Of course. Of course that happens. Is that the norm? No, it's not. Some of my favorite clients, I met them. They were an online lead, 10 years ago. And I met them and, we saw a couple of houses and it just wasn't right. And I will be the first to admit I wasn't great about staying in communication with them. But Mrs. Buyer was following me on social media. And so I don't even know how that came about. I don't know if she found me, I found her. I don't even know. And all of a sudden she reached out and she's like, this is the year we're going to buy a house. And it was like 8 years later. And I'm like, who is this? And then I pulled up the picture. I'm like, oh my God. And I remembered the very first house that I showed them. Like I remembered everything like once I was prompted, but I'm like, holy cow, that's amazing is that she was like getting to know me via social media, but I had kind of forgotten about her. And I felt terrible. This was like before I was doing emails regularly. I didn't have her on my email list. I didn't have any of that going. So, I mean, thankfully, social media connected us, but like there definitely was a lack of follow-up on my part. And that was totally my bad. Number 2 reason, in my opinion, is lack of knowledge. When you first get into the business, if you're a young person getting into the business, like you might not know a lot of stuff about real estate. Of course, like this is new. Everybody's like, you're a novice at it until you're not. But I think sometimes younger folks that get into real estate and they don't own a home, there's a lot of nuances with owning a home. I got my real estate license before I bought my first house. And it was kind of crazy is that I didn't know what I didn't know until I bought my first house. And I'm sitting at the closing table. My family lived in Minnesota. I was in Florida buying a house by myself. My lender, we were doing like this, let's call it an experimental loan program at the time. I just didn't think it was going to happen. Right. I mean, everything like talking about finance stuff, like I grew up in scarcity. And so like being able to like buy a house on my own without having my parents co-sign, without any of that was really a big deal. And I kept calling my loan officer. I'm like, we're going to close, right? I'm like, if not, I'm going to be homeless here like momentarily. And then I'm going to come live at your house. She's like, I'm an empty nester. We got plenty of room. So she was so great. But she's like, we're fine, Beth. Everything's fine. But like, I didn't know what I didn't know. And after I signed on the dotted line and bought my first house, I'm like, oh my God, the feelings of just like, I was so proud of myself. And not many single women in my family, like any of my cousins, most of them had bought houses with spouses or significant others. I think I was one of the first ones as a female in my family, and I have like 20 cousins, to buy a house myself. I was so freaking proud of myself, but like I didn't even know what I didn't know. And so from that experience, I'm like, okay, if I'm working with other first-time buyers, this is what I didn't know. These are the concerns that I had. These are the things that I'm in the business, but X, Y, and Z was nerve wracking. Like, I really need to alleviate these fears in my clients. And maybe you don't know a lot about houses. Well, who can you learn that from? Can you shadow a home inspector? Can you ask all those questions? Can you work with a really seasoned agent in your office, your first few transactions, so you really get some good knowledge under your belt? The one thing that I sort of take for granted, because I've been doing this so long and I grew up in a super handy family. A number of years ago, a new agent had joined the team and she was shadowing me, and we were showing a past client that I adore a house. And look, we were just kind of going through everything in the mechanical room and the different type of heating. It was a different type of heating than the buyer had been used to. And so she was asking a lot of questions, but I knew everything. I mean, obviously I don't know how to fix it, but like I knew enough about it to have an intelligent conversation. And just talking about like the home in general and like how a home works and how you maintain things. The new agent on the team, she's like, "Oh my God, you know so much." And I'm like, "Well, I mean, I've been doing this a long time. I've lived in a lot of different types of houses with a lot of different types of heating systems. And you just sort of pick things up when you come from a handy family." So I think for that agent on the team who, she had owned several houses, but I'm like, I think that was an eye-opening thing for her. She's like, "Oh shit, I need to be a quick study here and start learning more stuff about the business." So the more stuff that you can know about a home, about the real estate transaction, about how real estate works. If there's hiccups in the transaction, like how are you going to fix it? Like all of these things are really important to know. So you got to do your research. You got to find mentors, and also don't BS the client. People are so smart nowadays. They have access to so much information on the internet. It's not like we're 1972 and you can tell someone something. They're like, "Oh, sure, that's the truth." No, they can go and fact check anything that you say. So don't BS clients. It's one of the worst things that you can do. And it's one of the fastest ways to like ruin your credibility. So lack of knowledge is really a deal killer, but something that is so easy for you to learn. There's so much information out there. Number 3, failure to set expectations. I think this one is so important. I think real estate agents many times get a bad rap because we do real estate, especially if you're a full-time agent, like you sell real estate all day, every day. This is what you do. And so sometimes stuff just goes on autopilot. Well, you're like, "Yep, these are the next things that are happening." But does our client know that that's the next things that are happening? They don't buy and sell houses as many times as we do. Even my clients that are investors and they buy like one house a year, or flip it or do whatever, or buy several houses a year, not every transaction is exactly the same. So you can't expect someone that does this like hardly ever, like once a decade or more infrequent than that, to know what to expect next. So the more that you can set the expectation, say, "Okay, we wrote the offer. Here's what we can expect next. We're going to be in a waiting game. And then here's what to expect next. And then we have the inspection and here's what to expect next. Now we're through inspection. Now we're in this, we're in this hurry up and wait thing. And now we're in this little lull." Like giving clients the expectation about what to expect next, it just calms people down, especially if you're working with the engineer type that need all the information. And buying a house is stressful. Getting a mortgage is stressful. All of it can be very stressful. Yes, I mean, it is fun and exciting, but at the same time, people get worked up when they don't know what to expect next. So the more you can be preemptive and give clients the next steps as to what to expect in the transaction, whether they're a seller or buyer, or maybe they're both, and you even have more things going on, the less questions you're going to get. And the more like someone is just calm, they're going to refer you to people. I had a client last week at the closing table. She said, "I started making my pros and cons list when I started thinking about buying my like forever home, my home where that's going to be the last house I'm probably going to buy, and thinking about moving." She's like, "One of the top things on my list is," she goes, "I wanted low stress." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that's not the thing that is at the top of most people's list." I think a lot of people don't even think that that should be on their list. But she said that was one of the things that was so important to me. And she goes, and then I talked to you at Rotary and we got the ball rolling. And she goes, this whole process with you has been low stress. I'm like, yay, check off that list, low stress. But I set the expectations very clearly for her. I didn't know that that was one of the things on her list is that she wanted low stress, but I found out after the fact. But setting the expectation with her created an environment where she is a single gal. She does not, the last time she bought a house was 20 something years ago. And so we just made it super easy for her. And then at the closing table, she's like, low stress was my number one thing. And you provided that. Well, hallelujah. We didn't even know that was a thing. So failure to set the expectation is going to really make you look like a rock star, or setting the expectation and not failing to do it is really going to make you look like a rock star. Number 4, let's talk about problem solving skills. Some people get into real estate because they think it's going to be, I hear this all the time. So like, this is a blanket statement, but I hear this all the time. I got into real estate because I just love helping people and I love looking at pretty houses. Okay. I mean, that's a legitimate reason. I got into real estate, yes, because I love helping people, but I also love solving problems. If you do not have great problem solving skills, I think you're going to hit a lot of roadblocks in real estate. And like I said, the clients are not the experts at this. They do this every 8, 10, 20 years. So they're looking at you to be the expert. So how are your problem solving skills? Are you looking at it from like, okay, there isn't just one answer? That, like most things in life where a problem arises, there usually is multiple ways to solve the problem. But if you're going to dig your heels in and be like, this is the only way to fix this, I feel like you're going to have a lot of problems in real estate. This is one of those things where, be open to other ideas, be open to other schools of thought, refer to people that have been down the path more than you have. Anytime, this is one of the reasons that I moved my license from Keller Williams to EXP is that at Keller Williams, I became one of the top agents. And then I felt like there really wasn't anywhere else for me to go. Like I became the resident expert. Everyone was coming to me with questions. And I had very few people that I could go to get questions answered and to bounce ideas off of. I would say there's varying degrees of issues that come up in transactions, but sometimes they're really, really big hurdles to get over. Sometimes they're just like a little speed bump along the way. But the more that you can troubleshoot issues and get everybody to the closing line or the finish line successfully, and that isn't just your client. If your client wants to move forward, and the seller, like it's the common goal to get the buyer and the seller to the finish line, get everybody there so everybody feels good about the transaction. And, like I always like to play nice with the other real estate agent, but like be a person that comes from contribution and be a person that is open to different ideas and different ways of solving problems. If you can be a problem solver and you can think outside the box and you can provide solutions for people, you will be the agent that gets the referrals because that's what clients want. They want someone that can help them solve problems. Number 5, the last one on the list. And I feel like this one is so obvious. And you're like, Beth, duh, of course, this one is on the list. Well, not asking for the sale. That's number 5. So you build the rapport, you have all the knowledge, you are anticipating clients' needs, and you're setting the expectation and you're problem solving, and you know how to do all these things. But what if you're not a closer? The ABC, I'm like, always be closing. And I would not describe myself as super salesy. I hate when people put like the hard pressure sales on me. It goes against I don't know. I'm pretty sure it goes against my human design. It usually makes me really prickly. I hate going into stores and having someone like to try to like hard sell me. I don't like that. Like the timeshare presentations. Oh my God, give me a rash. No, I'd rather do anything else. I'd rather put like a sharp, hot steak in my eye than sit through another timeshare presentation. I don't like to be closed hard, but Are you asking for the close? And do you know what type of personality type that you're working with? Do you know how they make decisions? Are you, are you nuanced in that? Sometimes people just assume that a client's just going to come to the conclusion. You're going to look at a bunch of houses and they're just magically going to be like, yep, this is the one. Well, some clients might be like that, but not all clients are like that. Some of them you really have to like do a pros and cons with them, and you do a product of deduction. And of the 5 houses that we saw today, is there one you can envision yourself living in? Like, not everybody just magically comes to the conclusion. You're like, oh yeah, sure, this is what I'm going to buy, or you're the agent I'm going to hire. You have to be asking those questions, and you have to be initiating the close without being like a cocky douche, right? Like that. Nobody likes that. Nobody likes that type of sales guy. Nobody likes to be oversold. Nobody likes to be like mansplained or womansplained. Like nobody likes that. So like finding that happy balance that works with your personality and really knowing how clients like to make decisions. And I'll never forget, I had a client, gosh, I met her like over 20 years ago. And she was like a friend of a past client. And she was moving to the Twin Cities. We looked at tons of houses. So our routine every single Saturday was to go out and see. And like, this is back in the day, 20 years ago, when there was actually a ton of houses for sale. Nowadays, she would have only had like 3 options where she wanted to live. But years ago, there was gobs of houses for sale. And so she's like, I want to be X amount of minutes from the airport. She traveled for work and yada, yada. So we had all the parameters, and every single Saturday, and I can't even tell you for how long. I mean, it felt like for 6 months. It wasn't that long. But every single Saturday, we'd go out and look at 10 houses, and then we would go have lunch together. And we were becoming friends. Like it felt like we were like friends, not just, real estate relationship or real estate transaction. And we had seen, I swear to God, at least 100 houses. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, for as much as I look at like looking at houses, like I need to put another buyer in her slot. Like next Saturday, I need to be out with another buyer and sell more houses. And it was like, holy shit. Like I'm working for like $2 an hour at this point. And I finally said one Saturday, she kept on joking. She's like, oh my gosh, you're probably totally getting sick of me. And I'm sure my response was, no, you're not. I'm not getting sick of you, because I was, being passive aggressive about things. And we had seen a ton of houses that were really awesome houses. So had we not, I would have never said this. But I said, you know what? When you're done, when you finally decide and find the house, we can still be friends and go out to lunch. That doesn't have to stop because you end up buying a house. And she was moving here and like didn't have any girlfriends. And I was like, that doesn't have to stop. And guess what? The next week she bought a house. It was so crazy. And so I'm like, she was looking for a friend as well as like a trusted real estate agent. And like, I'm still friends with her 20 plus years later. She owned her house for years and years. And then when I got back into real estate, I ended up selling it for her because she moved to a different part of the country. But like, we're still friends. We still talk periodically. We still see each other on social media. But yeah, she needed permission that this friendship that we were forming, along with the business transaction, it was still going to happen. We were still going to be friends even when she bought a house. But she almost needed permission from me in order to make that happen. So are you asking for the sale? Are you like following up? Are you the knowledge broker? Are you setting the expectations? And are you getting really, really good at problem solving? I feel like if you master these 5 things, there's nothing that you can't do in your real estate business. And I would argue that you'll probably have one of your best years in real estate if you master these 5 things. So hit me up on social. Love to hear from you and let me know which one of the 5 really like struck a chord with you. Or tell me a good story about like how maybe you weren't a closer, but now you are because you gave somebody permission saying we still can be friends after the sale. I love hearing stories like that too. So hit me up on social. So until next time, bus bench babes, keep your face off a bus bench and keep being the badass boss babes that you are.
Okay, girls, are you feeling as inspired as we are? We're over here cheering you on because you just finished another episode of the Girl, Get Your Face Off a Bus Bench podcast.
If you want more, head over to girlgetyourfaceoffabusbench.com for show notes and more episodes. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. They mean the world to us and they're what keep us going.
Girl, thanks for being here.